Welcome Selma to the front of the room to give a speech of no longer than 6 minutes. We'll wait till you sit down. Don't worry.
Oh, he said Dutch's iPhone.
Yep. And,
Sorry.
We're almost finished with this gauntlet of debating. Let's all keep it pleasant and professional in cross-examination. And is everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay, Selma, whenever you begin speaking, I'll begin the timer.
Okay. Hi everyone, ladies and gentlemen. We are the affirmative side, and we are with the motion that says anonymous posting should be protected by law. First of all, the social media is being more and more important in our lives for people to express themselves, and it's a platform for everyone to express themselves and express their feelings. So, our first argument is the freedom of expression. The freedom of expression is important because it opens discussions, and critical citizens can express themselves and express their ideas. And it's mandatory for a democracy to protect this right, and generates more ideas in the marketplace of ideas. Also, what is the man versus the animal? The man have the ability to think, to express their thinking, to express their ideas. So, anonymous posting can help many different groups of people to express themselves freely. As minorities, religious and political minorities will be able to express themselves when they don't agree with the majority of the society. So, as black people in the USA that are treated by their skin color, and also the not accepted people like gay people, the LGBT who don't get accepted in their own society. So by anonymous posting, no one can know their identity, and they can express themselves freely. Also, the general public is very helpful for the general public to be posting anonymous. Because they will be more comfortable with the posting anonymous, and no one knows who are they. So if we don't enforce this law, first of all, lost voices in democracies, and we will lose ideas on the marketplace of ideas, and it's going to prevent the government from helping those who are the most oppressed in the society. So, I will go to our second argument, and it's the government obligation. First of all, the government have to protect the citizens' rights. Citizens living under the government are automatically bound to a social contract. This social contract that allows the government to provide the rights to the people. And as we have said in our first argument, the growth of society and the importance of the expression of the people, and the importance of freedom of expression is of the most important in this scale, in this contract. So this we think that the government must protect online anonymous posting to help these people and provide them this right and this freedom, because we believe that it's one of the most important duties of the government. Second point was the name of the law. we all have general morals that dictate our actions. However, we think that these general morals must be protected under the law. If a policy is codified, that it legitimize the value behind this policy, and is taking a recognition of the government that this right is very important, and without the legal support from the government, people can misuse this right, and they abuse other people. So for the importance of anonymity in different ways, which may lead to harms when we misunderstand this right. So without the perspective, fear to press caution, which destroys the protection of right, and as well as progress to society. So we have to protect the anonymous posting under the law. Thank you.
We'll take 30 seconds. Very good. Starting your prep time. Okay. You've used 35 seconds. That's it. Okay, so now there's a cross-examination period. It's 3 minutes, starting now.
Hi. You are with Anonymous too?
What?
You are with Anonymous too?
With anonymous?
Yeah.
Yes, we are with anonymous posting to be protected by law.
Okay. Which government will do this law?
Yes, the government will enforce this law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take that into prep time. Very good. So I'm starting your prep time again now. .30 left. All right, that's it. This speech is in 6 minutes. I think that's negative 6. Whenever you start speaking, Bradley, I'll start.
All right. Do we only have 2 judges?
Yep, we have 3.
Oh, cool. All right. Stephen King once said, "The trust of the innocent is the liar's most useful tool." And because we agree with King and understand that government protection of a dangerous law is both unnecessary and even detrimental to society, we negate. Now, before we go into today's debate, we'd like to clarify a few things. First, because we are talking about a law, we see that a government is the actor in today's resolution. Now, the affirmative has come here today, and they haven't said which governments are going to enact this or what kinds of governments are going to enact this. So that's going to be problematic for them, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So the affirmative's burden in today's debate is not to show that anonymity itself is good or anonymous posting is good, but that the government should be the one enacting such a law in the first place. And as we will show, they should not do so. All right, I'd like to move on to my opponent's contentions. They first talked about free speech. They said free speech is a good thing, that it comes with a lot of benefits. We'd agree, free speech is a good thing. However, they don't show you how anonymous posting actually protects this. And as I will show in my contentions, it actually does not protect this. But also, they said, just because we think that, first of all, freedom of speech has limits, but second of all, that it's violated just as much in both worlds. In both the negative world and the affirmative world. So we have to see that their first contention does not actually link back to why the government should enact any law whatsoever. It just says anonymity could be good because freedom of speech is good. So there's a lot of missing links and a lot of problems with this argument. The second argument they brought to you is government obligation, that the government has an obligation to protect its people. Now, we agree the government should protect its people, but the bottom line is, as we are going to show, this does not do so. In fact, this actually, as we're going to show in our second contention, actually enables people who pose a threat to both the government and its people, actually enables them to do more harm than they would. Now, they brought up this example of black people in the United States and African Americans. Now, what I'd like to point out is that they think that anonymity is a good idea simply because people can voice their opinions. But I think what we both agree on is it's not just about voicing your opinion, it's about making positive change in the future, such as movements. Now, what we can point to is that in the civil rights movement in the United States, for example, Martin Luther King, his philosophy was not that I'm going to be anonymous, it's that I'm going to say what I think because I think this law is unjust. And he accepted his punishment. He was not anonymous on purpose. He could have been, but he chose not to be. And what happened was he was put in jail in Birmingham. He said that exposed the unjustness of the law. And it helps get people to rally behind you because people see the unjustness of what is going on. So if my opponents really want to promote change, they're not going to simply say you can just post whatever you want and say your opinion. That's fine. What they really want change, they're not going to post this law, and they're going to actually have people accountable for what they say, especially in cases when they want positive change. Now, the negative change is what we're going to focus on in this debate, which moves us to our contentions. Our first contention is that protecting an anonymity by law is already unnecessary. First, many outlets for obtaining anonymity already exist in the status quo. According to Karina Rigby of MIT University, one of the most common and least complicated ways of obtaining anonymity on the internet is by making use of one of the many anonymity services. Some of these services are connected directly to specific news groups on the internet. Other anonymity providers are global and service the entire internet, and many anonymity services replace the header with anonymous addresses such as nobody@nowhere instead of your actual email. So what this means is that there are already so many resources in the status quo that you can use if you truly want to be anonymous. So we can see that this law wouldn't be necessary to actually promote anonymity in the first place. Our second contention is very important in today's debate. It's that anonymity protected by law will prevent private companies from verifying the identity of their users, which causes significant harms to both the users and the companies themselves. Now, in the status quo, we said there's already reasonable ways to be anonymous. But this anonymity between the user and the private website is what is really problematic. For example, there's a reason sub-websites such as Craigslist ask to verify a contact's phone number before posting. It's to protect their users. Many of you have heard maybe of the Craigslist killer. A young pre-med college student lured many women through ads and services to his hotel. He ended up torturing and killing them. And what we see here is that because he was only able to do this crime because he was able to remain anonymous. And what we see is that this is simply just one example of what happens when users are anonymous. And what this means is that Craigslist had to institute this law to make people accountable for what they do, because there are people like the Craigslist killer all over the internet. And the only reason we found out about this is because one woman happened to escape. Now, so what we see is that private companies, it's in their interest to protect their users and themselves, because if crime occurs on their website, that company is responsible. And if they cannot trace back who did the crime on their website, it hurts the company and it hurts the users of the company, which is incredibly dangerous. And that brings us to our third contention, that protecting anonymity by law would promote cybercrime and therefore harm national security. Cybercrime has become one of the most dangerous and increasingly prevalent issues on the internet. The FBI reports that in 2012, cybercrime was responsible for the theft of over $500 million in nearly 300,000 reported cases. According to the Center for Security and Privacy Solutions, stealth techniques enable cybercriminals to act without fear of timely detection, let alone capture and successful prosecution. It is among the most insidious and profitable of crimes, and it can be conducted from just a well-equipped workstation. Tracking and fighting these crimes becomes infinitely harder task and gives these criminals legal grounds to combat the governments that pursue them. So even if we institute this law, the government is still going to have to crack down to prevent people from harming their society. But even if they bring them to a court of law, this means that these people have grounds. They say, oh, you violated our anonymity, so you can't prosecute us, and they can continue doing these crimes. So what this means is that in the affirmative world, you're actually enabling crime, and you're enabling people to continually hurt society. And what we see is that cybercrime is inherently easier with anonymous posting because social networking and constant online communication have generated new vulnerabilities that create more and more cybercrime opportunities. So while we'll agree that cybercrime does happen in the negative world, it happens even more and without prosecution, the ability to prosecute it in the affirmative world. So in the end, what we see is that we need to protect our citizens, but the government should not be the actor. Anonymous posting is not the way we do so, and there are actually very serious harms that come if we institute the affirmatives law. And for these reasons and more, we negate. Thank you.
We'll take a minute, please. It's like the same case that the other people know. So it says that because of the and stuff, they can kill them, but I don't think they should protect them from all. But obviously, they will be protected just because we allow trade foods out. So we can trade foods into the food. It's the same thing. We'll have 30 more seconds.
Certainly.
So that's he said that Martin Luther King didn't hide it. But what if people don't like Martin Luther King? People have opinions, but don't want to. We might be imprisoned. Ready?
So I'm going to begin the cross-examination right
Okay.
Here, share with me.
Okay. Thank you for your speech.
You're welcome.
First of all, have you ever heard of IP addresses?
I have one myself.
Do you think that tracking those IP addresses is possible?
It's done.
Even if someone is anonymous?
It is done. That's what we're saying, is that even in the affirmative world, even if you want to enact anonymity, people are still going to be able to trace our IP addresses, especially in places like
So now you say
governments.
people can still trace people?
Absolutely.
So
and it will be done, especially
so in that case,
not in
your
all cases.
third argument false, right? Or your second argument false, right?
No.
Because verifying those people will still be able if they commit a crime.
It's still able, but it's far more difficult is what we're saying, because these anonymous
Do you think
cyber
people
criminals
who
are able
commit
to...
cybercrime actually put their name on their account, their actual name?
What do you mean?
Okay, you say like, okay, right now these people have a chance to, these companies have a chance to ask for their numbers or their real names. So we can verify them if they do something
Right,
wrong.
that's in
Do you
the
think
that's in the
people
negative world. In
actually
the affirmative
abuse
world, you get rid of
the
that.
internet and actually abuse things like this, actually put their real name or their real number in?
I'd say that they're anonymous criminals, so no. But the point is that we say cybercrime exists in both worlds, but in the affirmative world, you make it harder to actually prosecute these cyber criminals and harder to find them in the first place.
So, another question. Because killing happens, should we not protect human life?
I see where you're going. You're asking me if we should protect the principle of not killing. I'd say absolutely, but what I'd say also is that what you want to promote already exists. For example, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 19 clearly states you have the right to freedom of expression. So if you want to say that your argument is simply principle-based, that principle already exists.
No, the principle isn't freedom of expression. It's Oh, sorry. Okay, so you think that even though something has a good principle behind it, it shouldn't be protected by law?
We're saying that even if you have a good principle, which we don't necessarily think you do, but we do agree that freedom of speech is important, it doesn't matter if there's going to be all these reality harms that are going to happen afterwards.
Okay, so you think freedom of expression is good?
Yeah.
Okay, so you agree that something that promotes freedom of expression and even makes freedom of expression more accessible for anybody, even in cultures or countries where it's not possible right now to have freedom of expression, is a good thing?
I'd say it's a good thing only if it doesn't end up in more cybercrime and more harms than it actually promotes. So you can promote a principle as much as you want, but if you're only going to get negative impacts like we showed, it's a useless thing to pass.
Okay.
And actually hurts people.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to start the affirmative preparation time. You have 6:36.
Okay.
Six remaining.
I'm ready.
Tina, you have up to 5 minutes for this speech.
Ready? Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, we are the side that doesn't want to ban drinking just because some people abuse the right to drink. We are the side that doesn't want to ban cars even though some people may harm other people's rights with cars. And ladies and gentlemen, thus we affirm the motion that online anonymity should be protected by law because we want to protect the users of anonymity, not fear the abusers of anonymity. But before moving on to building back the affirmative case, let's first of all examine what side negative has told you today. Now, first of all, they set a burden on us. They say that we need to really show how we need to how and why we need to protect anonymity under the law, and this is exactly what we're going to do in our speech. So first of all, they give you this idea about how anonymity already exists, it's unnecessary. But by conceding to this point, we think that their side negative is essentially agreeing to the fact that anonymity is to a certain point good, and this completely goes against the rest of their case, which is not in support of anonymity. So we're really confused about what side and what stance they're taking in this motion. We don't know if they like anonymity or not, but in both cases, we still think that we win the round because in the case that they like anonymity, we actually increase anonymity, and we think that this should be protected under the law. If they don't like anonymity, then we prove in our first contention, our second contention, why they should. So second of all, they talk about this idea about how it's going to decrease the revenue for companies, etc., etc., etc. But ladies and gentlemen, what we need to realize is that when you have a law, you have regulations. Just because we allow drinking to happen doesn't necessarily mean we allow the abusers to, harm other people's rights just because, the law to drinking is legal. Likewise, with this resolution, we think that just because we do allow online anonymity, just because we do protect it under the law, doesn't necessarily mean we're going to condone other people who are going to harm other people's rights, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, if the law is protecting these people who are trying to be anonymous, we also have to have measures and persecutions for people who are abusing this law, and this is something that side negative does not take into account. So last of all, they give this idea about how it's going to increase cybercrimes. But ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we think that cybercrimes are going to exist both in the negative world and the affirmative world. But furthermore, more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, we think that it's going to be even easier for the government to persecute these cyber criminals because the government's actually enacting a law which is protecting anonymity. It's going to be easier for the government to track down these IP addresses because the government's going to have the full control of what's going on the internet, not these other private companies, not any other external body. Furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, they say that people can use, the protection under the law against the government and say, oh, just because I killed someone doesn't necessarily mean that I did anything wrong because anonymity was protected under the law. But ladies and gentlemen, what you need to realize is the fact that once again, just because there might be abusers doesn't necessarily, because there might be abusers, the government makes sure that there are measures in the status quo in order to persecute these abusers. Just because some people might violate the law doesn't necessarily mean that we don't enact a law in the first place. We think that the right to life is very often violated. That doesn't necessarily mean, ladies and gentlemen, that we don't have the right to life, because we think that the protection of users is more important than being afraid about the abusers. So let's move on to the affirmative case. First of all, we give you this idea about how freedom of speech and freedom of expression are very important in today's society. But side negative, all they say against this, ladies and gentlemen, is that we don't show how anonymity increases this, and that's what I'm going to explain in my speech. We think that because a lot of people are scared of being persecuted, scared of being judged online, that people actually don't post things on the internet, people don't contribute to the marketplace of ideas. And we think that on an online platform, on a platform of anonymity, everybody's equal. Thus, they're not scared to voice their opinion. They say that people like Martin Luther King weren't afraid to voice their opinions, but ladies and gentlemen, Martin Luther King is 1 in a million, ladies and gentlemen. We need to protect the millions of other people who are afraid of being imprisoned for the voices that they say. And we don't want this to happen. We want to protect the most marginalized people in society, and that's why we formed the resolution. Second of all, we give you this idea about how it's the government's obligation to actually protect anonymity under the law. Even if anonymity already exists in the status quo, we think that there has to be measures taken in order to codify this law, because if we realize the value behind a certain policy, behind something that we think is legitimate, then we think that the government is only legitimate when it actually makes sure that it codifies the law. Just because we understand as a status quo, as a society, that killing is bad doesn't necessarily mean that the government doesn't have the obligation to make sure that killing is banned in the status quo. And then they say, oh, you know what, it's not going to do anything, it's only going to increase harm. And we say not really, right? We say that things like cyber crimes and all the bad things that exist with anonymity that Side Negative talks about is actually going to be decreased with the motion, because it's going to be easier for the government to regulate the law that they themselves enact. So what has Side Affirmative shown you today? First of all, we've shown you a clear link between the freedom of expression and the progress of society and anonymity. And second of all, we've proven to you why exactly it needs to be protected under the law. And third of all, we've shown you that the harms that Side Negative brings up about anonymity is only going to decrease with the motion. And for these reasons, we beg to affirm.
We'll take 30 seconds. You have I'm starting at 6:28. Okay. So this cross-examination is 3 minutes. We'll start that time right now.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for your speech. So you said that some people are going to abuse the law, but who is it going to help?
The people who are most marginalized in society, people who aren't able
Like
to have
who?
a voice in this. As we've given an example, an extensive list of examples actually in our constructive case, we talk about minorities, people who have radical
Okay,
ideas,
so would you say,
whistleblowers,
like,
general
for-
public in general.
So just minorities. Minorities will have a voice, right?
Well,
But-
and everybody else that
Right.
we listed. yeah.
Okay. So wouldn't that make sense though? If the minority can speak out more, the majority can speak out more anonymously as well.
Yeah, of course.
So wouldn't that mean that there's just more abuse because the majority isn't hiding behind anything either?
No, we're saying that it's good if the majority has a shield in which they can protect themselves from judges.
So you're saying that the minority is going to have a clear voice
the
to say what they
minorities
want.
and the general public, as we've explained
Okay,
clearly
let's
in
move
our
on to
case.
another issue. So you said freedom is linked to progress, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
can you
freedom of expression.
Freedom of expression. Okay. Do you have any evidence that shows that people are going to actually promote more ideas and put more
Well,
ideas
it's
out
just simple logic, right? If you know that no one's going to judge you for, things that you say, obviously you're more inclined to voice your
there?
opinions.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to also talk about just going back to this majority argument.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that minorities are going to be able to just voice
Not
their opinion.
only minorities, but everyone.
Everyone,
Yes, everyone.
including people who seek to harm society, right?
Yes.
So how are you accounting for them?
How are we accounting for them?
Right.
As we said, we are obviously going to have regulations that are going to make sure that these people are persecuted, which is going to make it even easier than the status quo for us to persecute these cyberbullies.
Okay, but didn't we show you though that when you enact this law, it actually makes it much harder to prosecute these people because it's harder to find them and harder to prosecute them?
Right, but the reason that it's hard in the status quo is because the government doesn't have the IP addresses.
No, the reason it's hard in the status quo is the government is having trouble finding them. So how is it easier to find them if you make anonymity legal?
Right, sir. Okay, so what we're saying is that just the reason that the government can't track them down is because we don't have regulations, we don't have laws that make sure that the government has their IP addresses.
But wouldn't this law counteract that? I mean, no, we do have laws against cybercrime, don't we?
Yes, we do. But
so
the
how
government
doesn't this law undermine all of those because it makes it harder to combat cybercrime?
No, but what we're saying is that the government's going to have active hand in making sure that the right information.
Okay, no, we agree the government should have an active hand in this, but doesn't this law make it harder for them?
No, this law enforces that even more.
How?
Because as we've said throughout our 2 speeches, the government's going to get all the IP addresses. The government's going to be the only.
So you're saying that anonymity is not going to actually exist? That we're actually going to just not have anonymity because we're going to give the government everyone's IP address, right?
No, the government's going to have access to it. Doesn't mean that the government's going to actively use that information.
Was that stated in your first speech?
Yes, it was actually.
I don't think so. But thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Next is Jocelyn. Would you like to use any preparation time? You have 5:47 remaining.
We'll take some prep time.
I'm gonna still have prep time over in the podium, please.
Certainly. At this point, you have 5:13 remaining.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Okay. Well, first of all, we would like to point out that.
Wait.
Sorry. You tell me when you're ready.
Sure, when you're ready, but I didn't turn off the prep time yet. I'm not ready. Okay, so this speech is 5 minutes long, and now whenever you start.
Thank you. Okay, well, first of all, we would like to point out the inconsistency of our opponent's case. Because on their first speech, they said that they will give absolute anonymity to the people because so no one could know who they are and so they cannot be tracked. But then on their cross-examination, they come up with this idea of the IP addresses in which people could be tracked. So if they're giving the people the opportunity to speak for themselves and to do whatever they want without any repercussions, as they say, then the government will still be able to track them. And even in oppressive regimes, the people will still know who they are. So the government will still be able to track them, and so we don't see how the inconsistency of their case. Are they proposing anonymity completely so people can speak their minds and not be able to be tracked, or are they proposing that people are still going to be tracked? And so we don't see why the status quo will have to change if, as we already exposed on our first case, there's these tools already exist. You can already be anonymous on the internet. So why are we debating this? Then minorities will have a voice. So they came up with this idea of the marketplace of ideas. Of course, we also agree that there will be maybe more kind of ideas, but because majority will also have the opportunity to be anonymous, then we don't see how the minorities will also be able to kind of level up with the ideas of the majorities will be more, so they will still be oppressed, so they will still be a minority, so they will still won't be heard. So we really don't see what's the point if they are proposing a change in the status quo or just simply stay in the status quo, which is actually not relevant. Then we can see how this will increase cybercrime and cyberbullying. We have, for example, the case of Amanda Todd. She was, because she died, because she killed herself. She killed herself because she was feeling depressed because she was being bullied in her school. Why? Because on the internet, an anonymous pedophile tracked her and started extortionating her for naked pictures. So when she sent him the naked pictures, he leaked them on the internet, and so all of her friends at school saw that those pictures, they were starting to be to bully her, and so because she couldn't speak because she didn't know who this man was, then she killed herself. But we see that this happens in the status quo, and we don't see how our opponents are going to propose anything about this, because we see that this crime already exists, and if we protect this anonymity, then people will start being more violent, because they wouldn't be able, as our opponents discussed, they wouldn't be able to be tracked. Although this also comes with the inconsistency of the case again, because they're talking about IP addresses. Then we don't know which governments will allow this law, because they haven't stated that. How will this law be implemented? Like, what's their plan? We don't know that. We just know that they have some kind of magic plan, which is gonna be able, where people are gonna be able to track themselves, and the government is gonna be able to know who they are. But like, so isn't that what they're already doing with the NSA, who is looking at all of information? Isn't that even attempting to a right of privacy? So they are also thinking that this right of speech is absolute, that we can say whatever they want, because there wouldn't be any repercussions for that. But my rights end when yours start. So why will I? And they also talk about this moral. They said they call it general morals, that we will be protected by law. But they also said that people can misuse this right and hurt other people. Exactly. We believe that if we give the right to that we give everyone the right to speak their minds and say whatever they want, exactly this is what will happen. People will misuse this right and hurt other people, because there won't be any repercussions for that. So we really don't understand what our opponent's case is, and so we see that they have a lot of inconsistency. And let me reveal our case, because it's we say that this is unnecessary, because of course we already prove it is, because the status quo works this way. Then we said that private companies, which is a point that they haven't addressed at all, the private companies will have to protect their users, because anonymity leads to crime. And so if these web pages, for example Facebook, which is a private company, has the responsibility, the complete responsibility of what happens on their page, then they will be the responsibles for that. And so they will be the ones who get the repercussions for being anonymous. And then we already see the cybercrime that will increase, and the consistency on their case. So thank you.
How much time do you have left?
You know, the affirmative 5:34.
I will say 34. Just read it. Should not codify the law to download it. Because you're saying that because we already have anonymity, we should make the law now. So because people don't exist, should we make the law about it? Should I? Yeah. Ready?
Hello. Hi. Thank you for your speech. Just because people don't usually kill in society, should we not codify the law that bans murder? I'm sorry. Can you say it again? Sorry. If someone killed in society, yeah.
Yeah.
Should we not codify the law that bans murder? You're saying that if people kill, then should we promote the right of killing? Sorry, can I read the question? I don't understand. Yeah, or give me another one. Yeah. Okay. Why do we have anonymity if, in the status quo if it's so sorry. Why do we have anonymity if it's so bad in the status quo? Yeah, because we believe it's bad in the status quo. We also believe that it shouldn't be protected by law because that will only increase the amount of anonymity that we already have, which we think that it's not bad, that it's not good. Okay. What do you prefer? A small group to express themselves or no one to express themselves? Well, people actually currently can express themselves like if someone is so afraid of the consequences of expressing himself. But in your model, that will also happen because they will still be able to track them down by IP addresses. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, the affirmative now has, it's the affirmative's next, 4:45.
They said companies won't be able to do things with the law. And also what we protect things that are already anonymous.
This last round is gonna be hard. This round.
How are we going to change this?
So you may not have to stay long.
Doesn't that fall?
There's a reason for this.
No, because they're saying that this already exists. Or how's it going to be different by protecting anonymous?
3:30 left.
Yeah.
1 euro, please. Oh, and you radio, I should get a little more than this. It's expensive here. It's a great lecture. Two and a half left.
Is there another question? No, this is actually fun. Okay. But they talk about the government. They transfer from school. They talk about the government because they completely chop around. Or 17 transfer. So this. No, I don't think so.
So, is this a catch? No. They didn't answer it, so it wasn't a catch.
Well, they said that.
Point. They didn't ask.
I don't like that.
They also said that.
WP style.
We don't know how we're going to do it. Because they got they bring up who
It's very hard to judge.
technical department that covers
Based
the
on
government's thing.
debate
Just it's a
skills.
shift because of how you do it.
So, you have 1 debate, and then you have 2 debates. Don't know.
You didn't talk about that with the other
So you have to. Yeah, sometimes it's day and night. It's just
Police protect people who are inside the building.
integrated
Also,
representation.
they're saying that you're actually not protected.
No, wait, but what's the job?
Just say that. We both agree that's how we're going to
45 seconds left.
making sure that we focus on the policy side and something that already exists and
No, we're actually saying that it
yeah, it decreases but even if
It's much more subjective than this, which is fairly subjective. 30 seconds.
Yes. So we're on this cycle. I'm going to edit this one, just stop this. Maybe, no, maybe that's,
the order that they're in
because isn't this the same?
no.
Okay. What structure to start?
I think we should start with this. And because we're taking on this mistake, we should change the status quo.
Okie dokie, this is the final speech for the affirmative side in today's round 5 of the KT-LMNOP MTT. This speech should be no longer than 5 minutes,
This
whenever you'd like to start.
You?
I'll take it.
It's okay.
Is this the main stream?
Yeah.
Should say they're not famous.
Are you streaming us?
Whenever you would like to begin.
Yeah. Oh, wait. I never get this thing.
Wait, what time are you? I'll give you hand signals as
Yes,
well, but you're okay?
Yeah. Okay. So we have gathered here today to discuss the motion that anonymous posting should be protected by law. Can I just emphasize the word should? So we're not going to focus on the practical issues because we think this is a value debate and this is a value that has to be protected by law. In this debate, I have seen a couple of questions. The first clash is about does anonymous posting lead to positive or negative outcomes? The negative side said that it actually leads to negative outcomes. First of all, they came with cybercrime that's going to increase, but we say it's actually going to decrease because by protecting by law, the government will be able to regulate it. And that's one of the main things about what protecting something by law is all about. You see it in every daily basis. We see it in the Netherlands. We protected prostitution by law because we wanted to be able to regulate it, not let it happen under our wings. We wanted to be able to regulate it so we could actually prosecute the people who are abusing this right. Second of all, they say that companies can't protect their users anymore. Well, that's good. That doesn't even matter anymore because now the companies can't protect them anymore, but now the government is protecting them. So the government is just taking that job over. It's even easier for the companies. I think that's a pretty good development. So we say there are actually positive outcomes in this whole debate because of anonymous posting. We say that it's going to increase freedom of expression of the people. We proved to you why it was going to increase freedom of expression because, for example, minorities who just are not taken seriously anymore can just hide under another cover or just not say who they are. For example, black people, well, there are pretty much a lot of racist people in this world. We can easily say that still exists. So a lot of people won't take you serious because you're black, for example. But if you hide and just not say the fact that you're black, people won't have to listen, won't be able to judge you and your personal information anymore. They have to look at your ideas, and that's what we're all about. It generates more ideas. It gives more people the ability to generate more, to let their voice be heard and give their ideas over to their next generation. We say that because freedom of expression increases, like I've just proven to you, there will be a certain progress in society because, for example, the more ideas that will bring a lot of increase in the marketplace of ideas. But also, there will be more discussions, there will be more things talked about in society, and we think that's the progress we are willing to make. The second clash I saw today, and that's why anonymous posting does lead to positive things. So because it's leads to positive things, we think it is necessary to change the status quo. And that was the second clash I saw today. How is this going to change the status quo? The negative side, it wasn't going to change anything, but we say it does. For example, the first thing what I've just proven to you is is going to increase the freedom of expression, and with that it is going to make progress in society. But second of all, it's going to legitimize the value behind anonymity, because anonymity leads to freedom of expression, and for that it is an important thing behind it. Anonymous posting has been used for ages before there was internet. People would write books under anonymous name because, for example, women, and they knew they wouldn't be taken seriously if men knew they were women, so they published it under anonymous or under a fake name. And we have seen that this value has been kept very close to us in our entire lives, and we think that this value has to be legitimized. The third clash and the last clash I saw today is, what is the job of the government? Well, the negative side agreed with us that the job of a government is to protect her people and to be there to protect their rights. They just didn't see how we are going to enforce this law as a government. Well, we are just emphasizing the motion again. It should be protected by law, because anonymous posting is a value, and just like a value to life, just like a value to freedom of speech, it has to be protected by law, because a law is not just a way to protect things or to regulate things, like I've just proven to you. It is also a general accepted moral standard in the society. And because it is in general accepted moral in the society, it has to include anonymous posting, because anonymous posting is a value in our daily basis. So I've just proven to you by these three clashes why you have to vote an affirmative side, and please do so, because anonymous posting should be protected by law. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take the rest of our time.
You have 4:36. Yes. This one is interesting. I use MTT. I use Lincoln Douglas policy debate. What's the first policy? At the high school level, we can never switch to this primarily valuable topics. Sure. At the original level, they use a policy topic. Sure. At the high school level, they not only have primarily value topics, but they choose which ones they decide. Team policy is two persons versus two persons. They're the same topic all year. You do a tremendous amount of research. Each person makes two speeches, which is a big difference between the various speeches. And this I need is one speech. How much time is one speech? You have 40 seconds. Two speeches. It's time. We need 10 minutes of time. Lenka, you have 5 minutes. This is the last speech of our debate. Round 5 will be concluded after this. Whatever you would like to start, I'll start the time.
Okay, thank you. We have seen how the affirmative only wants freedom of speech, and you protect their people. We have shown with that neither of these are apple in the affirmative word. The first clash point is the net benefits. The affirmative says in theory, people who be able to voice their opinions, but that can already be done in the negative word. We show you that if the government upholds this law, it makes it harder to fight crime. So we should not, because principle already exists, and this law only does harm. The second issue is the government as the actor. The affirmative only advocates anonymity as an idea, no as a law. This debate is not about the value of freedom of speech, but about the real world implication of law that will hurt the values a country stands for. So we warn because their case inconsistent. But we show you the harms all the way.
So there's closed adjudication in this debate, so there's no reason to stay around. You guys can go
Good luck to Gerwin.
wherever you would like. Okay. This evening, I don't think I could reveal my decision, but I think I could give you some comments about the debate.
One more thing.